Hello, everybody, and welcome to this special webinar event, Reducing the Mean Time to Materiality. Do you know what data is putting you at risk? Today's exciting webinar is sponsored by Cyera and produced by Actual Tech Media. My name is Mackenzie Puddesy with Actual Tech Media, and I'm excited to be your moderator for this conversation today. Because more than ever before, organizations are at risk of cyber attacks. It's become commonplace to have some kind of breach or compromise of our data these days, and being able to reduce your attack surface is vital. Not only that, reporting requirements have changed, and the more quickly you can assess and report an incident, the better off you will be. Today, Cyera will be shedding light on some challenges with SEC Cybersecurity Incident Disclosure rules and protocols surrounding materiality and the potential ramifications that could affect your company. This includes challenges with over-reporting and over-disclosure, as well as enforcement for not meeting disclosure requirements. Trust me, you will walk out of this webinar with some nuggets of wisdom and actionable steps to reducing your mean time to materiality with the help of our panel of industry experts. This is going to be such a valuable session, and I cannot wait to get started. So let's zip through the housekeeping and get things on our way, shall we? First, I want to draw your attention to the questions section of your webinar console. This is the best place to get involved, get interactive, and post all your insightful questions, comments, feedback, and ideas. We do want to hear from you. So why don't you find that questions tab now, and let's start out by saying hi, hello, hola, aloha, bonjour, or whatever greeting resonates with you today, and giving a virtual wave to the community here with you. As a quick side note, that window is also the best place to reach out and let us know if you have any technical issues during the session. Knock on wood, of course. Do not forget that a browser refresh should also get rid of the usual tech gremlins. But if not, just shoot a message in that questions tab, and the ATM crew and I will be here to help. And the last little thing I want to point out on your audience console is the handouts tab. Go check out some cool resources and follow-ups to our conversation today, because it is packed with great info. In there, you're going to find a data incident response service or a data sheet in PDF that's going to ensure optimal and rapid response to data security incidents with expert assistance. A link is also in there to a live demo of Cyera, so you want to check that out. You can discover, classify, and protect your sensitive data in minutes. And finally, there's a link to trial the Cyera Data Incident Response Service. So all of that is in there. You're going to want to check it out sooner than later. So I suggest you go give those a click now, save everything so you've got them when you need them. And if all that cool content wasn't enough of a sweet giveaway, we also have a $250 Amazon gift card as a prize drawing at the end of our webinar. Of course, you must be in attendance during the live event to qualify for the prize, and all winners must meet the Actual Tech Media prize terms and conditions. If you're not sure what those are, you can find the full T's and C's also linked in the handouts tab. Okay, well, that is it for the housekeeping. I told you I would keep it short and sweet for now, and I believe we are ready to start the webinar. So I'm excited to introduce you to an incredible crew here today. We've got not one, not two, not three, but four speakers. We've got Ian Bush, who is the head of go-to-market services at Cyera, Nathan Smolenski, head of risk and incident response services, Tafi Makamure, who is the senior sales engineer, and they brought on their guest, John Hibbs, who's the former financial services CISO over at ManuLife. It's going to be a fantastic group discussion, kind of in a fireside chat style to lead off, and then we've got a demo finalized with a Q&A session. And just a little reminder, there's also a $50 best question gift card up for grabs for the best question asked during today's webinar. So I encourage you to submit mindful questions as they come up throughout today's sessions. There's nothing better, honestly, than being rewarded for your curiosity. So at least I would say that. And already I am excited to pick the brains of these individuals. So let's all do that together. And with that, Ian, take it away. The floor is yours.
Good morning. My name is Ian Bush, head of services go-to-market at Cyera. I'd like to take a moment talking about Cyera, the organization. Nate, if you don't mind, share with our listeners a little background on the company and the platform.
Absolutely, Ian. Thank you. And good morning, everyone. Cyera is a pioneer in the data security space that empowers data and security leaders to discover their data attack surface, control the use of data, monitor, detect, and quickly remediate risk. The reality is that we know data is the lifeblood of business. The data officers, CISOs, security architects, infrastructure teams, and all business stakeholders are looking to find better ways to protect and utilize data to minimize risk to the business, understand those risks and the costs of noncompliance, mitigate the impact of data breaches, and accelerate the time to revenue for key data-centric initiatives like generative AI. This is really why the Cyera data security platform exists, to help solve these challenges.
Beautiful. Appreciate that, Nate. So I tell you what, let's jump right in. Let's get some conversation going around this, if you guys don't mind, dear. First question for you. Again, let's feel free to keep this collaborative and make this a conversation. So we've all spent quite a bit of time in the information security space, and it's very clear that attackers have been picking up the pace on attacks, as well as becoming much more sophisticated in their approach. So this, coupled with the fact that data is becoming much more distributed throughout the organization, can be very challenging for security leaders tasked with protecting it. Nate, John, you've both been CISOs in the past. How would you recommend one get a grasp on this problem today? Where do they start? Where do they begin? It's a challenge.
And it's a great challenge. You know, we had an era before where you basically had the metaphor of a castle, right? With a moat, you had firewalls, all your data was centrally into your organization. It was fairly easy to understand at least where the data was located. Now with distributed computing and other capabilities and the way that the data has multiplied throughout the organization, it's hard to understand where it is, who has it, how sensitive it is, how much it would cost. It's really a very vexing problem that it's hard for anyone to understand. And when you really think about when you talk to chief data officers or CISOs or any other regulatory and compliance person, I've never met anyone who really understood any of the value of their data, where it's located, and how it is. And so one of the things I always recommend for cybersecurity leaders to start with, and boards actually, is to understand the 5 Knows, KNOWS, of cybersecurity. You really need to know the value of your data. You need to know who has access to your data. You need to know where your data is. You need to know who is protecting your data, and you need to know how well your data is protected. Those are 5 great questions to start. And at the same time, it's very hard for any organization to really understand where the answer those questions.
Yep. No, that makes sense. Nate, anything you want to add on to that?
Yeah, I want to double click on something that John said, and it was just about the growth or volume. And I think it's probably not necessarily widely recognized unless you are living in this space, like how much data there really is, and what the sort of the technological transformations that have brought on that growth. So if we take a minute and we look at our data landscape just in this year, 2024, they estimate that the global data volume, so this is like, think about all the sensors and things and wearables and stuff that we have, not to mention all the things in business, right? That volume is expected to increase 22.5% to 147 zettabytes this year.
Wow.
So that's a 22.5% growth over last year. And this spike indicates just a continual demand for information in the ever-evolving digital ecosystem, but also, as I mentioned, all that other stuff that we keep producing, right? Every camera in your house, every wearable that you have, et cetera. But beyond that, when you look at 2025, now there's a prediction. So we talked about 147 zettabytes, but in 2025, we're talking about, another considerable jump in growth to 181 zettabytes. That's just like remarkable, unbelievable amount of growth. So when you think about that data market and you think about what John's talking about, that just kind of, you kind of get a better understanding of like how that challenge just continues to get more challenging, right?
Yep.
We don't necessarily have that control over where everything is as we did, right? Users come to work every day with a very powerful computer in their pocket that's their own, that they like to use for all the things that they do, right? So just that transformation of business alone is just creating so much more overhead from the perspective of where is your data, and ultimately, those 5 Knows about how we're supposed to address the challenges of trying to protect it.
Yeah, no, that's good. That's good information. I appreciate that, guys. Materiality. So this is my next question, and this is a word that we are talking about continually here. And it's a word that the community as a whole, I think, is hearing more and more about these days. So obviously here at Cyera, materiality is something that we're very passionate about. And with this SE disclosure mandate, certainly that has something to do with this. Nate, would you mind spending a few minutes providing some background on this new disclosure rule and how materiality is such an important part of this?
Absolutely. I think, everybody's talked a lot about this, and I think there's a lot of, challenges in this. This is something that I think most organizations have tried to do for a long time, long before, the SEC came out with specific rules that public companies have to follow in terms of, cyber incident disclosures and what the impact to the business is. And I think there are kind of two challenges. I think that the one challenge is the challenge of under disclosure, right? Are you properly disclosing based upon the rules? Because the rules, while they're set forth, it's not entirely clear to everyone exactly. How do you determine what a material impact to your business? Like, from how does that actually impact the potential shareholder of a public company? So there's a lot of wrestling going on within organizations around how to address what we're supposed to disclose. And then if you think about the other side of that same coin, and you go and you do some research on this and read about it, the other side of that coin is really that you have organizations out there, because there's that uncertainty, and maybe it's because there is not a lot of clarity on what enforcement will look like over time, right? What are those things? What's going to happen if we don't do the right things? You see that certain organizations are taking the approach that they're disclosing everything. And I think that, there's this balance that has to be struck between the two, that you're disclosing the things that are, material impacts to your organization that could, in a public company scenario, cross that line and impact the shareholder at the end of the day. But there's a lot of risk to both of those, right? If you're over disclosing, you can imagine that if you're disclosing every little incident, now you've created this kind of challenge from a reputational risk perspective, because this information is public and it's like, oh, company X has now disclosed all these little incidents. Maybe we need to think about, the risks that company presents from an investment perspective, because maybe they don't have great cybersecurity controls, to the public. That's the appearance. But I think also to the regulator, that potentially invites more interest in coming and auditing and understanding why you're continuing to have these repetitive incidents. And the same thing happens on the other side if you're not disclosing. When the big breach comes, if that shows up in the organization, and the audit happens and the investigation happens, I think there's a lot of risk in then finding out that there's a lot of other things that were going on inside that organization that potentially had a much more broad impact. So I think it's kind of, for most organizations, trying to figure out how to strike the balance between the two, and then ultimately building those processes internal to have the right participants in the room to make the decisions on what gets disclosed. Like, you can't just go to market with every little time that the red light blinks in the data center or in the cloud that there might be a problem. You can't just turn around and disclose all of those things.
Yep. No, I hear you. It's certainly a struggle, but no, that's good information. I appreciate that. So I think we all agree that data has become the most valuable asset, right? We hear Yotam, our CEO, talking about it all the time, and I could not agree with him more. I think it's 100% so accurate. So how do you think this changes a CISO strategy, right, when trying to understand the risk associated with their data? Nate, you want to take that?
Sure. I mean, I think in most cases, it's always around understanding the data that's in the various environments that we have. I think John made a great point about, we used to have this castle and moat, but now the drawbridge is open, the moat's dried up, and the crown jewels have kind of made their way into all sorts of other places, right? Whether it be on the end user's device or, in a million different SaaS applications or wherever, right? With third parties, supply chain, et cetera. But it's also understanding kind of like the structure. Is it structured data, semi-structured data, unstructured data? What kinds of records do you have? And then really understanding that sprawl or data dispersion and the state of that data. How are we treating it? How are our third parties treating it? Those are really big challenges. And if we double click on the supply chain challenge, we used to talk about third party risk from a system access or a data access perspective, but it really has become nth party risk, meaning like that third party is one challenge, but what about their third party and their third party? So now we're getting into fourth and fifth party risk, and the supply chain risk that presents itself in the form of the access to our data or where our data ends up as a result of partnerships and different services that we may consume or support. I think that really becomes a big challenge to the CISO and to the chief data officer and to organizations that are trying to, kind of build a structure and a risk management approach to managing data.
Good stuff. Good stuff. John, you want to add?
Yeah, just to add on to that, Nate made some fabulous points, and there's also an interesting, I'll say, dichotomy between who's responsible for the data and making sure that it's secure, right? The CISO will say, well, I mean, I don't own that data. That's not really, it's the business who really understands the risk associated with the data. That's their thing, right? Some might say the chief data officer would say something similar to that overall, right? That looking at a more macro level. And then the business technology teams are like, hey, I'm just trying to get data out to support the business, to help us to, to do our mission and to make profit and et cetera, and the business goals and et cetera. And so you have this dichotomy in terms of responsibilities of like, well, who's really understanding this and who's really responsible for it? Because people are either too far away from the problem or they have different goals immediate to the problem being solved in terms of understanding that data and where it's going, et cetera. And so that then sets up with the sprawl of the data, who's really responsible for securing that data, who knows where all that data is, and especially from a tactical level to a strategic level across the organization, it's almost like an amorphous lake you can't see into.
Yep. No, that's good stuff. I appreciate that, guys. So listen, at the beginning of this conversation, we discussed some challenges that CISOs are facing today, like when trying to get their head around where their data resides. We always say, you've heard it a million times, it's not if, it's when pertaining to a compromise. I think everyone here would agree with that, unfortunately. So how can a tool like Cyera help with companies looking to take a proactive approach to understanding blast radius, materiality, et cetera? John, you want to take that?
Well, I think there's two pieces. From a proactive perspective, using a tool like Cyera can really help you to really understand the value of the data that you have in a data store. You can understand where that data resides. You can understand who has access to it. And really going back to these 5 no's, right? Who's protecting it and how well it is protected in a very rapid way, a very discrete way in terms of understanding each particular piece of data, who's doing what to it, who has access to it, where it can be shared, what's happening to it, that I don't think anyone has ever done like in the marketplace. This is really a groundbreaking type of platform.
Yeah, no, I agree with you on that one. Nate, anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, I think, just to add a little bit to what John said, I mean, I think there's, you take all of those things that he mentioned, and then we start thinking about what the responsibility is of the organizations that are leveraging the platform, right? They have compliance regimes and industry standards to apply to how they do business, and sort of all of that context that's provided from the platform as it relates to the data and how it's treated becomes super important, right? I mean, those are all things that was very challenging before. Not to belabor the third party risk world, but it's a great example of what a lot of security practitioners will go through. Let's say the business brings about the desire to buy a platform, and the security team and the procurement teams go through this process to assess that platform, and they say, this is great. You guys can buy the platform, but you can only have this kind of data in the platform. So let's say that, in most cases, and we've all seen this before, we implement the platform and the business starts using it. And then along comes another idea from the business that says, hey, this platform would be really great to put this kind of data in it, but they don't go back and reassess that platform for that type of use. So now you have a platform that was intended for one thing, and it started out in the right way, and now all of a sudden it's transferred and it's processing or storing or doing something with data that it was never intended to have. And so when you have that blind spot, that's where problems ultimately can, creep in, because, the security team and the risk teams probably said there's a reason why this platform is not allowed to have that data that is of a sensitive nature, because it doesn't necessarily have the controls, or maybe the controls weren't purchased with the platform, et cetera, to protect the data of a higher value. So, I mean, that's just one little thread to pull on. And it ultimately, I think that's just the power of what the platform can do. It can help give you that visibility to understand, did the state of this data change? Did this data store that was never supposed to have sensitive information now have sensitive information? And we have to figure out a path to remediation for that. I think that's super, super useful.
Oh, very useful. And I'm very excited to see where this platform goes in the near future. A lot of big things planned here. So great stuff. Last question for you. And this is something I'm very excited about. So this past month, we announced the release of our new identity module, Identity Explorer. This is something that I think we're all very excited about, and really believe this could be very helpful for organizations that are concerned about just general IR capabilities, right? So before we jump into the demo, Tafi, I'm going to pass this to you. Would you mind explaining to the audience, to our listeners, what Identity Explorer is and why this is such a powerful component? Very exciting stuff here.
Thanks, Ian. I think from the conversation that we've had, we have identified that there is a dire need for hardened security measures to safeguard access to our sensitive information and classified data that is being generated by mission-critical applications and by our business users. I think studies of major data breaches in the last few years suggest that most cybersecurity attacks and IT incidents stem from compromise of identities. Things like credential abuse, weak authentication mechanisms, lack of MFA, poor identity governance, amongst many other forms of identity security lapses, provide threat actors the opportunity to capitalize on security gaps and exfiltrate data. I mean, the figures speak for themselves, and they are absolutely staggering. According to the IDSA in their annual Trends in Identity Security report, 90% of organizations have experienced an identity-related incident in the past year. And if you think that's bad, according to Tenable in their Cloud Security Outlook report for 2024, 99% of organizations that experienced cloud-related breaches blamed insecure identities. In today's highly complex IT environments, it's not about whether a breach will happen, as you said, but it's very clearly when it will happen. And indeed, due to the massive sprawl of identities that we are facing, right? And it's not just, as you mentioned, employees, it's also third parties and vendors that we are federating with and integrating with, and machine identities. No one really knows where the threats lie or who is about to misuse the trusted privileges that they have in terms of access to the data. And so for us, what's particularly exciting about the Identity Explorer from Cyera is it's a module that provides a unified view of all identities, human and non-human, to show who can access sensitive data across your entire organization's estate and cloud environments. It also takes the high precision data classification that you get from the Cyera data security platform, and it combines it with identity access and insights. So we're really, really happy with this and proud of the capabilities that we are able to offer our customers to solve those data-related identity problems and help them increase their data security posture. On that note, what I'll do is I'll quickly dive into the demo itself so I can show you exactly what we do within the platform and just the power that you would get from the Identity Explorer module. So here we go, and we go right into the Cyera platform. So where I'd like to start is I would like to start with the data screen. As we know, within the DSPM world or within the data security world, it all starts with classification and discovery. And so we're starting within that view. Cyera's agentless platform provides continuous monitoring of your different environments, and using pattern matching, semantic algorithms, and AI and ML models, we are able to deliver 95% precision on classification. And that is the highest within the industry that we are aware of. Not only do we deliver precise classification, but we also show the context of that particular data itself. And this enables you to be able to find where your crown jewels are in terms of the different environments that they sit, and of course, the context of that particular data. With that being said, I'd like to switch over to the data stores view, where we are able to then have a list of the data stores themselves across different providers. So everything from Microsoft 365, Box, Snowflake, GCP, et cetera, all your, I would say, all your DevOps favorite environments, which are helping to drive business transformation at the moment. And not only are we able to show those particular data stores, but we can show the maximum level of data sensitivity that exists within there, the total number of sensitive records, and the different data classes that sit. But this is where the power of the platform really comes into its own, and it's all around the identity. Having identified and classified the data within the different data stores, it's all about who has access to that specific information. And as we can see on this identity screen, we have a list of the identities themselves, the different identity providers, which are providing that particular identity or the source, the type of the actual identity itself. Is it an app? Is it a user? Is it a role? Whether or not they're an internal party or external trusted party, the highest level of sensitivity of data that they have access to, the number of sensitive records that they have access to, and the data categories themselves. So again, we're starting to answer those questions around the nose of who has access to the data, and what's the scope of the data itself that they have in terms of access. With that being said, we can easily filter out any external identities that we have. In this case, we can see that 25% of all the identities in the environment are external. Those could be trusted or other external parties who aren't necessarily trusted to the business. And if we jump into our trusted, external trusted, these may be people who we are federated with, things such as auditors, etc. We can actually start to pick out the identities themselves, the type of identity it is, and of course, the total number of restricted documents that they have. Really powerful, super useful in being able to take a look at that. And if we dive in, because again, it's a question of, okay, so you're showing me that this user has access to sensitive records that are restricted across different categories, but what data stores do they have access to? And what is, if we delve in, you want to see further those data categories, it's just a simple case of clicking on the user. We've got full details of that particular user themselves. We can see the classification of the data. So everything from retirement, plan information, payroll information, bank accounts as well, whether or not those are employee details or whether or not those are customer details. Again, we've got that full rich context to enable us to actually determine the materiality of the data itself that's been exposed. And finally, we can take a look at the data stores themselves and have a really good view of where that particular data sits, even going down and taking a look at the actual classified data that sits across. So again, super, super powerful in terms of really looking at the different identities themselves, where the data sits, and what access users have. The last thing I'd like to mention in terms of this particular demo and where a lot of our customers are finding value is being able to determine who has got MFA enabled or disabled within the actual platform. And again, this spans across multiple different SaaS providers and services. And it's really important because for a lot of our customers and a lot of organizations, they actually do have trouble finding a single view where they've got visibility of being able to determine that. There has been a lot of talk around co-pilot access and also access by Gen AI. Again, the platform itself is able to give you full visibility of the users who have access via co-pilot, and as well as data sources that you may will have access from other Gen AI services. And a quick example of that, if I was just to click on this pre-built filter, I can actually take a look, for example, at roles that can be assumed by services such as Bedrock, and I can easily see what data categories that's got access to, with AI being something that's top of mind for a lot of executives at the moment, and which is representing the next level of digital transformation. Risks around AI are really starting to come to the forefront, and we are able to actually give access and visibility to it. Look, Ian, I absolutely love the product. I love what we are able to do. I can clearly talk about multiple features that we have within the actual platform itself. However, as a bit of a taster, I think I'll stop here, as you can see the power of what we are able to do with the platform itself. Yeah, I'll just pause on that part before I get too carried away.
No, I love the passion. No, this has been helpful, and yes, I think we're all equally excited as you are about this component. But to your point, the platform as a whole has so much to offer. So certainly looking forward to sharing that with our listeners down the road. But I appreciate that, Tafi. I'm actually, if you don't mind, we've got a few questions from the audience, and Tafi, I'm going to come right back to you on this one. So, in the event of a breach, how long does it take to get the platform up and running?
It's a really great question. And funny enough, Ian, this is the most popular question I have from prospects and clients that I talk to. Being British, of course, I would say it actually is faster to make a cup of tea than it is to activate the platform. Because everything is all agentless and is all API driven, it's a simple case of us being able to go into the platform and then enable it. Typically, it takes most customers about 5 to 10 minutes to get up and running. And then, of course, immediately we can kick off the scanning processes and the discovery of the data. If I can just quickly jump in, because the next question is, once you've activated it, which takes 5 minutes, that's great. How long does it take to actually discover the data? And in terms of the speed of access, I can tell you some unbelievable stories. But again, these are backed by customer testimonial. But typically, we can scan through hundreds of terabytes, if not petabytes, in a very, very, very short period of time. In most cases, within about 3 days, we are able to give most of our customers a good data risk assessment in terms of access. And that's something which, for a lot of organizations, just onboarding, it takes them weeks to be able to stand up infrastructure with alternative tools, and then takes them months to be able to access. For us, within weeks, within a couple of days, you start getting insights to the important things within your environment.
Great. No, that makes a lot of sense. And yes, I think certainly speed and accuracy once deployed is huge, right? Especially in cases of breach, but the speed to onboard is equally as important, right? So no, that's actually a very good question. I appreciate that. Next question: does this platform support on-prem and cloud? I'll throw that out there to Nate, Tafi. Anyone want to take that one on?
Yep. So
yeah, sure.
Yeah, I'll handily pass that one on to Nate.
Yeah, sure. The platform supports both on-prem and cloud, and we're continuing to add additional services in terms of the data stores that we're able to perform the discovery and classification on throughout as the platform continues to mature. So it's a regular cadence of adding additional services that our customers are seeing as the key services where their data is stored, both within their data center environments and within the cloud.
Got it. So both. Perfect. last question here. So how can this platform be used as part of a larger assessment?
I'll take
Nate,
that
you
one,
want to take
Ian.
that one on?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, it's a great question. We actually have a series of assessment services that we offer today, both directly from Cyera and then ultimately from partner organizations. We have a data risk assessment and a breach readiness assessment that both leverage the platform. In both cases, they are vCISO, virtual CISO-led assessment activities. And from a breach perspective, we have custom tabletop exercises that leverage the data inventory classification and risk identification that the platform provides. And that allows us to prepare kind of the control outcome from an administrative control perspective to show you the types of governance that you need within your organization to better protect and understand how to leverage data, for revenue generation, et cetera. But then also, helping to build you a prioritization and remediation roadmap for the things that are discovered during the assessment to help you get the outcomes that you want down the road and hopefully prevent a breach. So we have those services available today, and we're excited to talk to prospects and customers about those in more detail.
No, that's great. So yeah, I think that's interesting. The platform can be used for more of that proactive approach, breach readiness, what you're just speaking about, but also, God forbid, in the event of a breach, kind of that post breach, which Nate went through, and I'm sorry, not Nate, but which Tafi went through and showed us in the demo. So very, very powerful stuff. But that great question. So, ladies and gentlemen, this wraps up our discussion today around Cyera's approach to IR. We certainly appreciate each of you for taking the time to listen in, and we encourage each of you to reach out with any questions or interest in our capabilities. You will also be receiving or have access to resources through the audience console. Thanks again, and we look forward to speaking with you in the future.
All right. Thank you all so much for that. What an incredible presentation. Honestly, you gave me a lot to think about today, and I'm sure I am not the only one here in the audience who feels that way. So thank you so much. I also loved getting to see a demo, get a true sense of how everything works, and seeing that with Cyera was awesome. Now, I do want to remind you all to visit the handout section to get some great resources and follow-ups from our chat here today. You definitely want to grab what you haven't already, because we're going to be closing things out fairly shortly. So big reminder there. There is 3 links in there. We've got the Data Incident Response Service data sheet. There's also a link to a trial for that, and then a link to a live demo of Cyera. So check those out. Grab those before it's too late. And before we wrap up, we have one more little bit of fun to add to an already awesome webinar, and it is time for a prize giveaway. So big reminder that you must be present and live today at the webinar to win. The winner of our $250 Amazon gift card is, a little drum roll please, Christopher Morse from Massachusetts. Congratulations, Christopher. As always, we will be in touch about claiming your prize after the webinar today. And don't forget, if you did ask a question, thank you. We did not have time to get to all of your questions today, but the team will be following up afterwards to make sure you get any information you were looking for. And you might just be the winner of the best question today for a $50 Amazon gift card. So fingers crossed for that. And again, thank you for being interactive. Thank you for taking the time to be here today. It's a little bit difficult to stop and lift our heads from our day-to-day and really think ahead, plan ahead, strategize. And you all did just that today. So I hope you're feeling energized and ready to take what you heard and what you learned today and make use of it in your organizations. And with that, on behalf of the Actual Tech Media team, I want to thank Cyera for making this webinar possible, and especially to our incredible speakers who have given us so much to think about today. I know I've learned a ton from this session, and again, I hope that you all have as well, and I hope that you had some fun today. Now, I can't wait to see you all at a webinar again soon, but until then, I wish you all an absolutely magical rest of your day. Take care, everybody.